Hey everybody, Sean Holsinger here from HolsingersFlyShop.com again, bringing another video. This time again we got a guest tyer in the shop with us. We got Tim Cammisa here from Trout and Feather, and this is a great opportunity. We like to have other tyers in to share their perspective on things, and this is no different. I met Tim doing one of the tying shows at the symposium, and became good friends. Still haven't got to fish together, and that always never works out. I fish with all my friends, but anyhow, what are we going to tie today?
So we're going to be tying, it's a variation of Kathy Beck's Super Beetle. Really great summertime fly. I know we're recording this in July. Who knows when everyone's watching it, but it's been just a really great fly to fish early summer the whole way through like September. So it's a great topwater pattern.
Well, right now here at the shop we got Japanese beetles everywhere, so it's a perfect fly for right now. And the other thing it's great for is I like to fish beetles with an ant underneath it.
Yes.
Using my beetle as an indicator. It's a killer pattern this time of year. Usually starts right around the 4th of July here in our area, and they'll go all summer, just like you said.
Yeah, you got it. The one nice thing, the one kind of thing I'll point out to all the viewers, when you're fishing this, really slap it down in the water. And don't hesitate. If you make a cast and it goes behind the fish, let it run out, because there have been so many fish that I've caught over the years where I've made what I thought was either an errant cast, and those fish will turn as soon as they hear that, any terrestrial really coming off the ground. So go for it. Let that fish or let that fly kind of drift out, see what happens, then kind of make a recast.
This is a great beginner's kind of fly to tie and to fish, because you can't fish it wrong, literally.
No.
The harder you smack it on the water, the more attention it draws to it.
Absolutely. And keep it real close to the bank as well.
Yep. All right, well, let's get into tying it.
You got it. So I'll take you through all of this. In the vise, I have a hook from Honik. It's their competition hook. It's their H230BL. The BL means that it's a barbless hook. I'm using this in a size 12. I'll fish these anywhere between a size, we'll say 10 down to a 16. I don't really go much smaller than that. Then it's ant territory, like you were saying. I'm going to start with some 6/0 uni thread. The color's black. And I'm just going to start this up in the front third. Get my tag end out of there. And we have a few things that we're going to be kind of doing throughout this pattern. The first thing that I'm going to add to it is an underbody, because I want to keep, and you'll notice this as I'm building up the fly, I want to keep this back portion of the fly really prominent. So I'm just going to add a piece of foam. This is just a piece of closed cell foam. It's kind of a throwaway piece.
That's like, what, about 1/8 of a...
Something like that. I think they sell it as in millimeters. Maybe this is around 3 millimeters. Don't get caught up in the size. If there's anything to get caught up in this fly, I'll tell you when we get there. But a lot of the materials, don't worry too much about them. Just kind of think to yourself, how can you make it a little bit more of a prominent body?
Right.
So once we have that body established, I'm going to add some type of ribbing, because I'm going to be using peacock curl, a little different than the material that Kathy uses in hers. For the ribbing, this is something else, don't get caught up in it. You can use wire if you want, even though it's a dry fly. In this case, I'm going to use a crystal flash material. The color's green just because it blends in. If you want to get more specific and look for certain shades that match peacock, go for it. Otherwise, look for some type of an olive green color. I like it because it just gives off a little bit more flash. And whenever I kind of lock this in, I want it going just starting down the bend of the hook. So get it down to that point. I'm going to place it in the material holder, and next I am going to grab some peacock curl. So in Kathy's original pattern, or at least the one that I know she ties, she uses a dubbed body. And I'm definitely not a traditionalist at all, but there's just something that's special about peacock curl. Whenever I think of a beetle, it's peacock. Now, the downside is you may not get as many fish out of the fly. However, it looks really good to me. I know I can get a number of them. So I've just cut the tip because they're really fragile. Just going to tie it in by the tips and bring it back up, and don't hesitate to go back over your body a couple more times. Don't worry, you're not necessarily securing the foam, the underbody. We really just want to make sure that we're building up the body.
One thing I've kind of noticed with wrapping that foam underbody, you haven't drawn it down real tight either. You've kind of left it, not loose wraps, but tight enough to hold it down, but not tight, so tight that you're squishing it down.
Yeah, exactly. If you want to play that game, you can. Be cautious of the thread. I mean, maybe go with a GSP or something like that. And whenever I tie in my actual piece of foam, I'll show you kind of the difference that we have with the foam I'm using versus some of the other foams out there. For a peacock curl, I'll just advance it forward, touching wraps or as close to it. I'm going to bring it up just maybe 1 wrap or 2 wraps past the midpoint, and then lock it in place. The one thing your viewers can't see is that instead of grabbing this from a peacock eye, which I love to get curl below the eye, I just grab this from a bag of Peacock because I know so many tires out there, that's what they have easy access to. But what all of you can't see is that on the table, there's like 25 pieces of Peacock curl that I've just shoved to the side because there's not a lot of great Peacock curl in there. So whenever I select a piece, this is one that I've kind of already tied with. Let's see if this shows up on camera. I want to get a piece that has as many fluffy feathers kind of extending out from the stem as possible. It's going to be tough for this one to pick it up because I've already kind of stroked them opposite the stem, but I want to see a sheen to it, and I want those fibers to be as long as possible.
And I will agree with you. The peacock eye, that's what it is, because they're not compacted in with all the other feathers. They're always alone, never being crushed.
They're just wonderful. I mean, all natural materials, they're great, and we're kind of in an age of synthetics, but if you can find quality natural materials, go for it. All right, for our ribbing, this is that crystal flash. I'm just going to counter rib.
And that's important because a lot of times when I tie peacock dubbing in, I'll wrap it around my thread to give it extra strength, and you didn't do that. So the counter ribbing here is super important.
Exactly.
But when I wrap it around the thread, oftentimes I won't have a nice fluffy body like that one.
Not as much, not as much. Now at this point, there's a couple options. I'm going to put a half hitch, not because I'm worried about everything kind of running aground or coming apart. I really want to make sure I have a secure base for my foam. And this is going to be a little bit of a different foam body Beetle than other ones that are kind of out there. For this, I'm going to be using just a small piece of foam. It's relatively significant. And the one thing I want to kind of caution people on, you'll notice whenever I lock this in place, it's going to turn a little bit on the body, but not a crazy amount. A lot of tires just believe they just have to get the strongest thread available and just really bear down on it. What happens with a lot of the foams, once you start to do that, it just tears them right in half. So there are different kinds of foams out there, and if you're having problems with it spinning, just experiment with the type of foam. Now for this one, I'm going to line this up, and it's going to actually extend over the back of the body. So I want it just extending that far. Now once you've tied dozens of this fly, you kind of know exactly where you can push the eye into the foam. In this case, for a lot of the viewers who haven't tied this, I'm going to set it over the stone, or set it over the body. I want the tip of this just extending past the peacock curl. And where it's lined up with my thread knot, I'm going to just put a little notch in that. I'm going to poke a hole with my dubbing needle. And that hole is now just going to get slid over the eye of the hook. Maybe. So now I've kind of lined it up so it's right where I need it to be. But before I tie it in, I'm going to take this front portion. I'm going to also pop that over the eye. Be careful when you do it. Take your time, because if you do it a little fast, sometimes you'll get like a little extra piece in there. Now at this point, this is where you can show off your muscles or do whatever you need to do. This is why I use 6/0. I like to be able to put 1 or 2 loose wraps and then bear down. A couple more, bear down. Force it down. When I let go, it should not spin. Then I'm just going to come forward just a couple millimeters and do the same thing right behind the eye. Okay, so we're starting to secure the front section. So I just took a couple wraps, bound it down, and this is the point where if you notice, as I start pulling the thread, this front section will just move a little bit towards the camera right now. So we really want to be cautious of not allowing that to occur. So I'm just going to back my thread off a little bit and go over this bubble and just do my best to, I don't want to say lock it in, because again, we don't want to tear this foam, but we just want to make sure everything is nice and secure. So if this side turns a little bit, we're going to have a way to correct that at the very end of the fly. Now next, some stuff that I noticed that Kathy uses on her pattern, she'll put something like a crystal flash over the top, and it looks very realistic. It gives you that shellback appearance on a Beetle. I'm not saying it's not needed. I prefer to just kind of keep this a little bit simpler than that.
The fish can't see the top of the fly.
They can't. Now I'm going to use some Antron yarn. This is going to be like my cider material, so I can see this fly. If you want to go very realistic, you want to keep it black or dark, go for it. It's tough for me sometimes to pick this out on the water if it starts to drift. So I'm just going to cut a piece of this yarn. This is Antron yarn in a fluorescent fire orange. So I have this clump of it. And what I'm going to do is just simply take this clump and just almost break it in half. So I can keep this other clump for the other fly. So I have one little strand of it right now. I'm just going to wrap it around the thread. I'm going to lash it straight down. Now be cautious. This is one mistake I see tires make with this fly. Whenever they lash it down, they'll bring it really close to that foam. And when they let go, it'll just pop straight up. So instead, whenever you lash it down the middle point of that segment. Then just make a few wraps back. And if it clumps up a little bit, you'll be okay, because we're going to do something to correct that here in a bit. I'm just going to trim it, and I want to make sure I have all those fibers and trim just up from the back of that. Now the last material we're going to add are some silly legs. I'm going to be using some perfectly barred pumpkin colored legs. Don't get too caught up in this. There's very few materials in this fly you should get caught up on.
Right.
The foam is, for me, the most critical. I like legs on this fly just because they add a little bit of movement in the water. They give some vibration to it, so kind of go with it in that sense. I just pulled one complete set of legs. What I'm going to do is cut this in half, put one half to the side, and then cut it in half one more time. So with one of those sections, again, just like with the antron material, I'm just going to lash it around my thread and prop it up and kind of look for that V shape coming out. A second wrap, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So take that second piece, wrap it around my thread, lash it to the other side, look for that V. Once I have the V, then I know I'm getting really close. So this is the view from the top. There's the view from the bottom. If you're not happy with the way that they're kind of shaping, you can play around with them, and I would recommend you do that first before you move the foam. I don't get too caught up in kind of moving them all over the place. As long as they're splaying out, that's really what I'm looking for. And then the last step before we tie off is just taking this front foam piece and folding it over. Whenever you fold it over, you just want to make sure you expose that eye so you can get your tippet through it. If one of these legs is not kind of in the right spot, just play around, you'll get it. I'm going to wrap some wraps right between all those legs. I'm looking for around 5 to 7 wraps.
Creating a nice little head there.
Yeah, create a nice little head. Just be cautious. Sometimes my wraps will get behind the legs or in front of the legs, and it'll kind of catch those. So just make sure you don't do that. I'm going to now just extend my thread. So let's get a nice little whip finish in there. All right, we'll get our thread out of the way. We'll cut this piece off. Just kind of lashing, just really holding things in place. For the legs, I prefer to kind of look at these from the bottom. If I'm fishing western rivers, I tend to leave them a little bit longer than the body. Eastern rivers, right around just a hair past the body length. And then now at this point, I can kind of play around with them, make them look just how I want them to look, kind of go for those V's. If one side's longer than the other, just do a quick trim. And that's all there is to this pattern. Now, a couple little tips that you have. If you want to take something like a Sally Hansen, a Mega Shine, a head cement, you can use your dubbing needle and just cover the thread wraps down below. The other little tip that I've seen used on this fly that really does help it out at times, and there's different points in the fly where you can put it on. I can take that back piece and pick it up and pull it towards me. Let me get some super glue. I know this, for the traditionalists out there using super glue on peacock curl, they're just going to turn off the video now. But I'm just going to pick up the back section and just put just a little dab of it along that peacock and the foam and push down. And that peacock will help set it in place, and it will also help prevent it from kind of rolling around, kind of moving around the hook and doing all that crazy stuff.
Especially when you get a fish or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm not too concerned about that. The super glue is just one of those nice little options. So this is the finished Super Beetle, a couple variations on it versus Kathy, but it's the fly that I've been tying and fishing for the last few seasons, and it's worked really well for me.
That's a great looking pattern. I haven't tied that one yet. I'm going to for sure have to. But thanks a lot for coming on to our video here today. We love bringing guys on like this, and it's a great opportunity to show off other people too. And Tim, how can we find you out there?
Easiest way, go to my website, troutandfeather.com. I have a contact page up there. Click on that. They can email me, go through that. They can find me on Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff too.
And if you're one of the 6 people that watch my YouTube channel that hasn't subscribed to his channel yet, get over and do it. So
I'm sure. No, trust me, I'm sure. There's lots of great viewers on all these YouTube channels.
No doubt.
You're running a great one too.
Thank you.
Keep it up.
And it's great to have the opportunity to share like this with another guy like this that's doing the same thing, and it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it.
Cool, me too.
We're going to have to do it again.
You got it.
All right. Thanks a lot, Tim, and thanks everybody for watching. The material you can find at our shop at Holsinger's Fly Shop, other than the foam. Tim, where do you pick up the foam? Tell us a little bit about that foam clip, because it's not normal.
There's a bunch of different foams out there. The easiest place that a lot of tires go is like Michael's or Joann's or some craft store. But what I've noticed with that foam is it's very fine. It's like a 3mm foam, and it's very condensed. And that stuff really just seems to rotate. This is, I think they consider this fly tying foam, but I bought this at actually fly fishing shows. And I'm whenever I look for this stuff, I'm looking for stuff that it will really condense under my fingers, but it will also make that hard smack on the water.
You can really see it here in the side view of this fly, the open-celled foam as compared to the tight-celled foam that you get at Walmart or whatever. So if you come across that, pick a sheet of it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
But other than that, everything else you can find at the shop and is common stuff that you probably already have in your fly box, actually.
I'm sure.
And also, one thing I will add about your Antron hotspot on the top, different colors work better in different light conditions. So have it in a couple different colors, because as you get on into evening, you might not see that as well as you see a yellow or something like that.
Yeah, great point. I used to use white on that, and white is really nice because it kind of blends in with some of the bubbles, but the problem is it blends in, and you can't always see it. So for some people out there, I know they go with some type of a hotspot that's really almost outrageous. So you can see it. The issue is whenever you're looking at this fly from the bottom with some of those outrageous ones,
it gets too big.
It really just gets large, and this is something that I can see. The color, orange, hot pink, those are great colors to use.
Right. All right. Well, thanks again to Tim for having us on the show today, and check it out. I'll be on his show sometime coming up in the near future, sharing one of my patterns with you. So thanks again for watching, everybody. Until next time, I'm Sean Holsinger, along with Tim.
I'm Tim. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.